Well,
I'm
Robert
so
Rogers,
nervous.
you're about to meet the Mushroom Lord,
Oh my
the
God.
Wizard of the Woods.
Hey y'all, so you know I'm on my tour of Canada, and I am so lucky to be doing this today. And I want you know that what I do with my channel is I do my best. Not only do we have fun, and not only do I do stupid stuff, but then I also try to help educate you, about the science and stuff like that. So, who I'm bringing you today, and you've already seen it in the title. If you haven't done your research on it or looked him up yet, then by the time we're finished with this interview, hopefully you will feel very enlightened and very excited, because if you like to go down rabbit holes, by the end of this, you're going to be going down some rabbit holes. So what I want to do is introduce you to somebody, but first I want to tell you about the work that he has done. And of course, you saw the title, and I don't know if I'm going to put this in the title, but this was the book that got me interested in Robert Rogers' work. And we'll talk about the Fungal Pharmacy. We're going to talk about some other books too, and why this one is so important for the channel, for the Amanita mushroom. And he is an amateur mycologist, citizen scientist, but in his career, he wanted to share, how like I want to share the traditional use, but also the science side of it and try to be balanced. This is what he also did, the approach that he took in the book that we're going to talk about today. And so he was a clinical herbalist in clinical practice for 50 years, and then an author for 30 years. And how many books?
Well, I just finished number 58 on psilocybin.
That's insane. Yeah. So to say that this is an icon in the field, I mean, that is just an understatement. And I'm so honored that you're giving us this time, because these people need to meet you. You are phenomenal. The canon of work that you have done so far is just mind-blowing, and I'm really grateful. I know of you because of the Fungal Pharmacy. And when I saw, how when y'all look at books or look at anything about Amanita muscaria, you're like, oh boy, here we go. This ought to be pretty crappy. And sure enough, it's going to be really bad. And I was so excited because I'm a cheerleader for people in the field. And so I looked at the book, I'm like, come on, let it be good. Come on, let it be good. And sure enough, there's 20 pages devoted to Amanita. Why 20 pages when all the others get a page or two?
It's an important mushroom. It has a lot of mythology, it has a lot of science behind it, and a lot of information and misinformation. So it was important to put out what's accurate so that people can make their own minds up. I think that's why I did it. And
to put this in perspective, this was 10 years ago. It is now 2021. So 10 years ago, he was doing what Kevin Feeney, with the Fly Garrett Compendium, did with his book, to try to treat it well and cover all the aspects of it. What I'm trying to do with my work now, this was the very first person that said, wait a minute, the world isn't doing this correctly, and to do it correctly. So the first thing I want to tell you to do is look in the description and get this book. Not only because this is the original treatment of Amanita, but it is divided up into, and most books on mushrooms don't do this, but he covers the typical things like indigenous use and the morphology and most of the things that you're going to see in a book. But he covers myth and legends, traditional uses, medicinal use, which he used in clinical work, and homeopathy, essential oils, which we're going to talk about, fungi essences, which I have never talked about with you. We're going to talk about mycoremediation, insecticides, recipes, dosages. He's got poems in here, quotes in here, the personality traits of Amanita. So this is great. But then He covers the entire fungal pharmacy. So if you're like me, once I got into Amanita, then I started getting into reishi and into lion's mane, and there's this whole cliff I fell off of. So this is the fungal pharmacy guy. So the one thing, I know I'm not going to do this in the right order, but I'm just really excited to talk about the essences.
Yeah.
So I've never discussed it, and I know I am only recently starting to understand the fatty acids in it and the oleics and stuff like that. So can you tell us what you know?
Yeah, well, there's two things to note. One is there is information on an essential oil that's produced from the mushroom. But what my book, Mushroom Essences, is about the idea that each of these mushrooms in different forms, many people may be familiar with flower essences. And of course, those are produced solar, and they're about spirit, and they're about, shifting patterns that may not be useful to you anymore. And so about 25 years or so ago, I began to look at mushroom essences, producing them under lunar in different manners, and then had the good fortune to have a clinical practice where I could actually invite some of my clients to trial them and find out what they're about, because it's really a difficult thing to discern what is a mushroom essence specifically for. And so I did that, and then I finally wrote the book up about 3 or 4 years ago, and I sent it off to my publisher in Berkeley, and he said, Robert, he says, no, that's too vague. Nobody's going to buy that book. And so I said, well, okay. So this was a Thursday, and I said, well, Doug, if I don't hear by Monday, I'm going to self-publish it, because I put 26 years of work into this. I want to get it out there. It's important to me. He said, okay. So that weekend, he happened to go with his family up into the Sierra Nevadas, and he came up over a hill with his family, and there was a group of 8 herbalists sitting in a circle making a flower essence. And so he respectfully, edged up towards them and stood there until they noticed him, and he said, he asked what they're doing, and they told him, and then he said, well, what do you think about mushroom essences? And all 8 simultaneously turned to him and said, where do you get those?
Uh-huh.
And they came back to the office on the Monday and said, okay, we'll print your book. And therefore it came into being, and it has gotten a little bit wider distribution than it probably would have gotten if I had self-published it.
What's the difference between an essence and an essential oil?
So an essential oil has scent, it has smell to it, and like lavender is an essential oil, and that's produced by steam distillation. Mushroom essences are produced in a crystal bowl with water under lunar influence, and then it's a vibrational. There's strictly no material in it, very similar to homeopathy, but it has the energetics of that particular mushroom in it, and therefore used for different things. Particularly, most of these are really work well with Jungian psychology, or people who want to look at the shadow side of our emotions.
We are all very familiar with shadow work, aren't we?
Oh, good.
Yeah,
a lot of people aren't, but that's good.
on.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so that's what it's about.
And it's interesting too, because one of the things that we're learning about mushrooms is in all of the forms that you can consume it winds up not only being physically medicinal, but emotionally healing, but also very transcendent. Even the ones that aren't considered psychedelic, because this one isn't considered psychedelic, but then that just depends on what your idea of psychedelic is. But even things like lion's mane and reishi, now we're starting to go, wait a minute, we think there's a lot more going on there.
Yeah.
What about the essences of those two, of reishi?
Reishi is in here. I did 2 of them. Ganoderma applanatum, which is the perennial that grows in Alberta, really. And then I did Ganoderma suge, which is a more...
That's my favorite.
Yeah, and it's in the book as well. And they're quite a bit different, and but they still have some weavings of familiarity. And so those are the 2 that are in the book. Yeah, and of course lion's mane's in here as well.
Do you think that traditional and first cultures used essences?
I'm not sure. I do know that it's very interesting. It's very common for people who, when they come upon red-belted conch, particularly if you're out with a group, for the first time, to encourage them to perhaps lick the glutation off of the conch. And I think that's kind of a similar thing. I have no proof that indigenous peoples in North America actually made mushroom essences. I don't believe they did.
That's one of the things that I like about your book. And y'all, I gotta tell you, I pick out the weirdest stuff in books, but of all the things I could quote from this book, and this is what I'm going to quote, and you're going to think that I have lost my marbles. Some research suggests that 2 to 3 tablespoons of butter or oil will help to mitigate the effects of too much agaric. It has been ingested, but I don't think that would help. The reason why I like that, it's so rare to find somebody in their work turn around and say, I'm going to give you this information, and then I'm going to turn around and say, I don't think it's valid.
Well, there's a lot of interesting mythology with this mushroom, but there's also a great deal of misinformation. In fact, it's still today, you'll often pick up mushroom field guides, and they'll put Amanita muscaria in the back under the poisonous.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely not true. I mean, there are some Amanitas that I would not even go near. I mean, deadly, etc. But I mean, I've cooked up and I've eaten this mushroom, and it's fine.
I don't want to leave this book. I could sit here and talk to you all day just about this book. But what I want to do is I want to introduce what you're doing and everything, because some of you show up here, you learn about the Amanita, and then you leave, and that's fine. But some of you, as you move on to other medicinal mushrooms, and I told you this would be the thing, but some of you are using psilocybes also, and so he's got you covered. Let's show them what... He doesn't even have the book yet. A copy
I don't have the
book.
author copies, but it is on Amazon and selling quite well.
So, but this is what to look for, what the cover is. So can you give us a quick rundown about why you felt like you should discuss the psilocybes?
Yeah, there are several reasons why I thought it was a good idea. I mean, it's always been an interest of mine. One of the main triggers was about 8 months ago. I was approached by a company that is going to be growing psilocybin, organic psilocybin mushroom for clinical use. And I'm working with a psychiatrist at the university here who's going to be doing some clinical trials. And I wanted to explore more the history of, and so I go way back to the thousands and thousands of years where this mushroom has been utilized in all parts of the world. I mean, as far as we know, certainly Middle East and a lot of Central Mesoamerica. So I did that, and then I wanted to talk about some of the characters and people associated with more modern uses of the mushroom, starting back in the late 60s when after people like Hoffman identified the active ingredients in the 50s and all the way up through to present time. And then all of the clinical research, over 100 case studies using double-blind placebo control that have been done by Carhart and Griffiths at different universities and institutes, showing the efficacy and benefit of psilocybin for everything from anxiety to depression, OCD, post-traumatic stress, all of those kinds of things, showing remarkable benefit without as an alternative to the plethora of anti-anxiety, antidepressant drugs out there that really don't shift people's lives. All they do is suppress and numb them. And so that's, to me, it's a very exciting venture that we now are on the edge of not only many states having decriminalized it, but now the next stage will be the actual legalization. Oregon's setting the way, California coming on, and Canada eventually. And
Michigan's doing some serious decriminalization.
Yeah, exactly. They had a big MTO fest the
yeah.
other day.
Yeah.
So I think it was exciting to do it, and I thought if I'm going to be in the field, One of the things in the book that some people like, some don't, was that almost all the trials done to date are synthetic psilocybin. And I believe that the future is psilocybin in ratios with psilocin and other compounds that may prove to be quite different for different kinds of conditions. And so I'm more the natural, organic mushroom kind of guy.
See, you're among friends here, because I talk about that all the time. That entourage effect. Science has been so remiss in the way that they isolate something and then hold it up, as the holy grail, and they take it out of its environment.
Right.
And that has never worked.
No.
That's not how life works on planet Earth.
No.
And it has actually caused a lot of harm. And I don't understand why then, when we're going into clinical trials with psilocybin, are they pulling it out and doing that yet again when, the mushrooms are so easy to grow? Like,
I know.
There they are.
Incredibly easy. They grow in some people's yards.
Right.
So,
And then I wanted to show y'all this because we're talking about clinical trials. He also covered this in the human clinical trials. When did you write this one?
that was about 1.5 years ago, something like that. At the beginning of COVID. I was locked down March of 2020.
This is your COVID baby.
Yeah, that's my COVID baby. And I had 2 months of going nowheres. And I thought I always wanted to be. And the reason I wrote it is that one of the things that I find is that when people go to their oncologist for cancer treatments, let's say, for example, they're very often told not to take anything with their chemo. Mm-hmm. And that is scientifically incorrect. In fact, this book is full of hundreds of human double-blind placebo-controlled trials showing that the mushrooms taken with chemo or radiation not only alleviate a lot of the symptoms through that treatment, but the survival rate is much better and proven. And so when oncologists or medical doctors come up to me after I give a talk and they'll go, well, Robert, that was interesting, but there's no proof. I can hand them a book or tell them to buy a book. And then the studies are all done, up to date. Anyways, up to 2020.
So if any of you are going through this, or anybody that you know that's going through chemo or has been diagnosed, look at you can pause the screen maybe or take a screenshot of the table of contents. This is thorough. This is really well done.
Well, I did the major 20.
Yeah.
And Amanita's in there simply because there's some new evidence that it has some very interesting compounds, water molecules that are highly anti-inflammatory. And I also wanted to share my own personal experience with the homeopathic, which I used in clinical practice, and how beneficial it can be in cases of Parkinson's tremor. So that's also in the book.
What else did you do with Amanita in clinical?
That was about it. Really.
The inflammation stuff?
Yeah, I used, well, when I had my clinical practice, I haven't been in practice for 22 years. I retired early. But now I'm finding that a lot of people are either using fresh mushrooms or dried, and then with making alcohol tinctures, particularly for external use. And I'm still struggling with the idea of which is more powerful. They both work. They both are amazing for neuromuscular, but drying the mushroom first and then tincturing, or use the right fresh and then use that. I can't really tell you at this point which is more efficient.
Well, I'll leave you my pantherina oil. I make an oil, I dry it, and then I put it in olive oil, let it soak for 6 weeks, and it's an oil extract. It's extremely powerful for anti-inflammatory. So I brought some to give, for different reasons, different people, whatever, about the fact that we just met up with someone that's doing work, with a mass spec.
Yeah.
And one of my goals, selfishly, is I want to get my Muscaria oil extract, my pantherina oil extracts tested to see what's coming over in them, because Ivo and musk aren't supposed to be, fat extracted. So something is coming out that's active, because once those mushrooms are pulled out and boiled, and I try to drink them again, they're empty. There's nothing going on there.
Well, it is interesting, and here I talk about a fairly recent study where 2 water-soluble compounds have been identified as powerfully anti-inflammatory. So I do believe there's a need for water and alcohol or oil like there's got to be an optimal ratio we haven't discovered yet.
Right?
Yeah,
And it's so exciting. I could talk to you about this for so long. It's so exciting.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this one.
Oh, this is just a recent book. This is Dwayne Sept and I did a book on medicinal mushrooms of Western North America, and just a little briefly, and nice color pictures, a lot of no citations, but a lot of interesting information on medicinal mushrooms that are unusual. For example, like the Dyer's polypore. I mean, normally not an edible, but has some interesting compounds in it. I do some of the basics as well, but it also is very interesting. And it's tiny, compact, so I don't have citations.
Yeah.
But,
You have a chanterelle.
Yeah.
It's medicinal, you think?
Yeah, right. You can read all about it.
Oh my gosh. Look at what's sitting on this table. So I'm going to put the links to all of these. The psilocybin one, I'm going to put the link, all of this is going to be in the description. And then this one, y'all, it's the Bible. I mean, this is the one that I'm going to tell you to go get. And then this one's great for travel.
Especially for West Coast people.
Okay, cool. And then this one, y'all, mushroom essences. I mean, that's like a whole cliff I'm falling off of. If y'all want to fall.
Yeah,
with me.
if you're a practitioner who uses flower essences, you may want to explore this whole area.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the clinical trials, if y'all are interested on the medical, side of things and how it's developing, then you should get that one. And you have so much work out there. So even if you don't want to go get any of these books, there are so many that you can read. And then just Google his name on YouTube and you will see him all over the place. So this is a playground of information here.
Well, thank you very much. I really, I've never done anything else in my life. When I finished university, I began studying herbal medicine, and then that switched into medicinal mushrooms, and I've just been very fortunate that people have caught on and are getting something out of it and enjoying my work. I really appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, y'all. So if you want to learn more, you can Google his name and you'll get everything. And then you've got all of this stuff. I'm continuing the tour of Canada. There's a lot more videos in this entire series coming up. Don't forget that we do Patreon Zoom meetings. If you want to support this work and help me pay for the debt that I'm going to have after this trip, I would really appreciate it. And if not, buy me a coffee. I need the caffeine, y'all. Later. Thank you.
Thank you. You're a good interviewer.
Really?
Yeah, I think so.
Yay.
Yeah, I like when they interviews flow organically rather than like you have a list of stuff and you don't allow the participant to diverge a little bit. I think it's important to leave it open.
That's how I like to do.
Talk about the little box too. I mean, it's still growing, but you can just add that in if you want. But
You could take a little vial out and you could talk about it if you want. Yeah, you can have a little vial actually. I think so. Let's see how many I got in there. I haven't. You can't buy it anymore.
So these are vials of not just Amanita, but I mean, what's specifically in it?
So it's Amanita Muscaria in all the different homeopathic ratios that it says that. So dilute, dilute, dilute. So it works on both the physical, mental, and to some degree the emotional level. And when I had a clinical practice, I would take these. These are used as injectables in Germany. So what I would do is I would take this and I would shake it down, and then I would cut it with a little nail file there, and then split it open. And then I put that into, I think you can still get this on the internet from Germany. And so then I put that into a 50 mils of water, succuss it, like homeopathic. And then I would have people take 10 drops twice a day and so I kept records. I still have a filing cabinet full of files. I had 24 people with different degrees of severity of Parkinson's tremor. And 18 of the 24 had complete cessation of their tremor.
Wow.
18 of 24. So that's strictly empirical evidence in my clinical practice. It's not double-blind, placebo, blah, blah, blah. I actually observed it. And so I think it is a very valuable medicine.
So it's all of the compounds of Amanita? How is it
Yeah,
extracted?
so it's the Amanita as a dried mushroom, and what they call D, so that's D4, 12, 30, and 200, meaning that they take the original mother tincture and then they make it dilute. And by the time you get to, as you know, 10 to the 23rd, there is no physical substance in here, strictly the vibration. And it works. Yeah, so
That's
people
crazy.
who want to make their own, it's basically a very, very, very dilute tincture.
So what is the point, if essences work so well, what's the point of using the mushroom whole body or extractions?
Well, this is specifically for Parkinson's, whereas the Amanita muscaria as a mushroom essence is completely different. It has a lot of issues that are associated with exactly what you would think. It's all about the idea of contraction and expansion of mental and emotional patterns. And Dupuytren's contracture, for example, is a contracture of the actual muscle, some of the tendons in the hand, and it may be useful for that. And how I prepared it is very much like the traditional Celtic use, where they would take the full Amanita cap, remove the stipe, turn it upside down, gill up, fill it full of water, and then people would drink that water. And then they go and have dreams at night. And then the family would share their dreams the next morning about what came to them. I mean, that's pretty powerful stuff.
So this is spore work, with spores. Right?
In this particular case, the spores are involved.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, a giant puffball is all spore.
Yeah.
It's totally spores all on top of the water, yeah.
Well, Lord, there's another whole rabbit hole. I'm going to dedicate a year just to the spores. Mercy. This has been fascinating. The spores? Wow. Okay.
The energetic of the mushroom, right? The energetics under lunar, which really is, I mean, it's an underground, it's a hidden, it's got all of those aspects to it as the living organism, and completely different than flower essences, but complementary.
You know, I teach
Yeah.
classes on microdosing Amanita, and one of the things that I teach them is these were the words that came out of me, was that expansion and the whole black and white yin-yangness of this mushroom helps you learn to stop black and white thinking and live in the gray.
Hey, I love
That the
it.
whole world becomes that middle, so that you learn to flow, to shrink and expand instead of being so rigid in your life and in your thought.
Wow.
That's how they told me
That's
to
exactly
express
what
it,
it
and
is.
it's exactly what you're saying.
Very intuitive. Very intuitive.
This is all I want to do all day, every day, is talk about Amanita.
Well, I think Amanita is going to move itself into the health and medical field within this next 5 years. It's going to be, especially some of the work that's being done by other companies. I mean, I forget which company it is, but they're bringing over significant quantities of dried mushroom from, I can't remember if it's Latvia or, I think it is Latvia. And we're going to see it because it is a legal mushroom.
See, he's talking about psych wellness, and,
Yeah.
and I interviewed Jeffrey on my channel. If y'all want to go find that, I also have a video on corporations and the FDA and the law and how all that percolates down. And those of you that got all upset when I interviewed him about the legalities of it and then about corporations and all that, go watch that video before you get upset about us talking about this, because this has a good place, because we're not about gatekeeping, we're about healing and helping people find what they need to heal. That's what this is about.
Yeah, to do the work, I mean, there is a whole corporate, anti-corporate attitude out there amongst some people, and understandably why. But without some of that actual angel investment, people putting back in who have made a lot of money back into some of the psilocybin research, the Amanita research, to actually show how these natural substances can really move us ahead as a society, it wouldn't happen. And so I really treasure that people want to be involved. Corporations are not evil and bad on their own. It's just a mindset that has been created. Companies can do great work as well.
And I've been telling y'all all along, y'all just wait, give it 5 years and watch what happens. This mushroom has been trying to find its place again among the humans. And that's what it tells me when I work with it is, we've missed you so much. We are so happy you're back. We have so much to talk about.
Exactly. Well, you have to understand that mushrooms have moved around the world, and there is this symbiosis with individuals, with humans. I mean, like psilocybin, those mushrooms want us to get our act together.
Yeah.
To start paying attention and try to treat each other with the respect and love that is needed. And we live in very divisive times, and more these mushrooms are helping bring us together and understand our commonality.
Exactly. It's beautiful. Thanks.
That's a really strange Amanita shirt in the sense of it's showing like the genetics somehow.
Yeah. Fungi magazine. They put them out. If you go to their site, you can buy one. Yeah.
Just fungi. That's
fungi.
Yeah.
Fungi.com.
Yeah.
And what is showing really?
It's showing the DNA sequencing. Like the TACC, blah blah blah. Yeah. It's pretty wild. I like it.
Hold it up.
You can get it like short sleeve. I like a long sleeve for Northern Canada.